Today I'm sharing part 2 of how to change the slope of your shoulder without changing or adjusting the actual armhole. In part 2 of Efficient Workflow for Bodice Fitting, I shared how to slide the entire armhole down to change the slope of the shoulder. And at the same time, I got a comment from Joy on my other video I did where I showed how to lower the armhole by sliding it down, the entire armhole, and she commented that I think that would change the slope of the shoulder. I want to thank Joy for pointing out that lowering the armhole does in fact change the slope of the shoulder. She has a very cool YouTube channel. You can check the description below for a link. I think you should go check her out. When you lower the armhole, by sliding it down, you are changing the slope of the shoulder. So I actually shared that during this process we're working on now for Efficient Workflow for Bodice Fitting. But if you just need to lower the armhole and you don't want to play with changing the armhole and then also the sleeve cap, you can still do this, but there's a part 2 that you need to consider. And I just want to remind everybody what I'm talking about here. Here are my original pattern pieces for my mini half-scale dress form. Okay, those are the ones I shared to show how to prep the pattern and make a half muslin. Then what I did was I traced a copy of them. I created these L-shaped guidelines, cut them, and slid both the front and back armhole down 1/4 inch, trued up my shoulder seam, and then I sewed together a muslin so you could see what happens. Now, in the video that I did showing how to lower the armhole, I was working with a knit top, and the student that I was working with, we did that, and we just slid it down, and it worked, and it didn't cause any problems with anything else, probably because we were working with knit fabric, and that's why it didn't occur to me that it could cause a problem if you're working with a woven top. So again, I just want to reiterate, I'm going to put this part 2 link in the description to the video where I show how to lower the armhole by sliding it down. But I'm going to show you now that it does cause a problem when you're working with woven fabric. So if anybody's doing this adjustment just to lower the armhole, let me show you what you have to do to finish it up. Okay, when I sewed together the muslin, what happened was I put it on, I lined up my center back and my center front, and what happens is, because I lowered the tip of the shoulder here, it's sitting here nicely, and it's picking up here, okay? So the slope is not correct. So the way to fix that is, you're going to pinch out the amount of fabric that you need to get it to sit at the base of your neck, and you're going to drop the neckline slightly so it's back where it should be. So you can see I drew with a red pen where it should be, and it's almost 1/4 inch. So okay, it's almost 1/4 inch. So that tells me that obviously if I lower the slope of the shoulder over here 1/4 inch, this is going to be 1/4 inch too high. And that kind of makes sense. So basically, you would just pinch that out to maintain the slope of the shoulder, and then you would just re-establish your neckline. And really, that's not very difficult to do. Let me show you how to transfer these adjustments that I did on the muslin onto my paper pattern. Here are my adjusted pieces, and here is the muslin to match. I want to look at that first so I can explain how we're going to adjust the pattern pieces. And I think to make it simple, I'm just going to take out the side seam so I can lay this flat for a second. The first thing I want to show you here is, because we need to pick up the neckline edge of the shoulder like this, it's also going to shorten the shoulder seam a little bit because we're also lowering the neckline. So the shoulder seam is going to shorten slightly, and the neckline is going to be a little bit lower. Now the cool thing is, this is a really easy adjustment to do all in one step. Let's start with the front. I am going to mark the amount I need to shorten, And it was about 1/4 of an inch. Let me just... Okay, so I'm just going to mark that 1/4 of an inch right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to cut my stitching line of my neckline and my shoulder, because I want to lower not only this to here, but I guess I should dash it in. So we kind of want to bring the neckline down about this much to agree with what we did in the front. So you can see how I lowered it there. I'm going to lower it there. So watch how easy this is. I'm going to cut on my stitching line, and I'm going to cut my shoulder seam. I'm going to make a pivot at the tip of the shoulder, and I'm going to break, well, let me pivot it in first. I'm going to pivot this down, the shoulder down, to match the mark I made, like this. And I'm just going to tape that down. Sorry, my hands are in the way. I'll show you in a minute. All right, so I lowered that, but in order to get this neckline to work, I have to break this pivot here, and I'm just going to slide this into place. Now, remember, the shoulder seam was shortened that little bit, so this works out very nicely. You know, then I can just trim that up, and that takes care of my front. And then let's do it again on the back. Okay, so I'm going to mark my 1/4 inch. Right here. And I'll mark my neckline, you know, with a little bit lower. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut my shoulder. Oops, let's do it this way, sorry. I'm going to cut the neckline. Oops, I'm cutting on the wrong line. Hold on. Sorry about that. Let me just do that again. All right. I'm going to cut on my stitching line to the tip of the shoulder. And I'm going to make a pivot here. Okay. And then let me show you from this direction. I'm literally going to take the seam allowance that I cut, and I'm going to pivot it down like this. Okay, then I'm going to break the pivot at the neckline and shoulder here, and I'm going to slide the neckline into position like this. Okay, then I'm just going to neaten that up. And there I have my adjusted pieces. So now my slope is back into agreement. So this brings up sort of an interesting dilemma in fitting. Almost every adjustment that you do affects something else. So if you want to lower your armhole, your choices are you can cut out the entire armhole and lower it, and then adjust your neckline and tip of the shoulder at the neckline, or the end of the shoulder at the neckline. Or you can scoop out the base of the armhole and then adjust the sleeve to make it a little bit bigger. So usually there's something you need to do to follow up an adjustment if it's affecting another area. So I hope this clears it up for you in terms of what you need to do if you're lowering the armhole and you need to maintain the slope of your shoulder. Again, I'm going to put this in the description to my video where I show how to lower the armhole without adjusting the armhole, so that people who are following that video can also check out part 2. If you have any questions or comments about this, please post it below and I will help you. I'm going to include all of this information and all the information from part 2 of Efficient Workflow for Bodice Fitting in the next PDF companion, along with information about adjusting the pink zone. So get ready for that. I'm super excited. I'll be diving into the pink zone in the next episode. I will be including all of this information, plus all of the information I shared 2 weeks ago in the second part of Efficient Workflow for Bodice Fitting in the next PDF companion, which I will launch next week when I do part 3 of Efficient Workflow for Bodice Fitting. So look forward to that. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a lovely rest of your day.